Imagine a world defined by straight lines and sharp angles. From the towering concrete monoliths of Soviet cities to the iconic silhouette of a Volvo 240 and the unmistakable profile of a Glock pistol, there's something compelling about these designs that don't bother to hide their boxy nature. In this video, we're exploring the surprising connections between brutalist architecture, utilitarian vehicles, and functional firearms that all share one common design philosophy. If it works, put it in a box. These aren't just random examples of angular aesthetics. They're the physical manifestations of an entire design ethos that prioritize function, efficiency, and honest materials during a pivotal era of industrial design. So what makes these boxy creations so endlessly fascinating? Let's find out. The rise of boxy design wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of industrial evolution. In the post-war era of the mid-20th century, manufacturers across industries faced unprecedented demands. Build more, build faster, and build it affordably. The answer? Standardization. When Soviet housing authorities needed to shelter millions, curved walls and ornate details weren't just impractical, they were impossible at scale. When automakers like Volvo and Mercedes sought to maximize interior space while simplifying production, the box became the obvious solution. And when firearms manufacturers like Glock revolutionized their industry with polymer frames, those straight lines weren't just aesthetic choices, they were manufacturing necessities. The box represents the triumph of the assembly line, of modular components, of interchangeable parts. Consider the manufacturing advantages. Flat panels are easier to stamp, right angles simplify assembly, and standardized components reduce costs. In architecture, prefabricated concrete panels could be produced en masse and assembled with minimal skilled labor. In automotive design, straight body panels were significantly cheaper to produce than compound curves. In firearms, simple geometric shapes allowed for fewer machining operations and more consistent quality control. But this utilitarian approach had an unexpected consequence. It created a design language of brutal honesty. These objects don't pretend to be something they're not. A Lada doesn't disguise its purpose as a people-moving box. It was literally just a moving box on wheels and an engine. A brutalist apartment block doesn't hide its construction method. A Glock doesn't mimic the flowing lines of traditional wooden grip pistols. What's fascinating is how these practical limitations gave birth to objects that now inspire passionate devotion. These very features that were once considered industrial compromises, the sharp corners, the flat surfaces, the unadorned functionality, have become the hallmarks that enthusiasts celebrate today. As we explore these categories, we'll see how different industries independently arrived at similar solutions, and how these boxy designs came to represent something more than mere functionality. They became powerful symbols of an era that valued substance over style, function over form, and honest materials over decorative pretense. Perhaps nowhere is the boxy aesthetic more monumental than in the concrete landscapes of Eastern Europe. In the aftermath of World War II, the Soviet Union and its satellite states faced a critical housing shortage. The solution was as pragmatic as it was dramatic: standardized prefabricated housing blocks that could be erected with assembly line efficiency. These weren't just buildings, they were industrial products. The Khrushchevska apartments, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, in the USSR, named after the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, represented housing reduced to its most essential form. 5-story concrete panel buildings with standardized floor plans, minimal ornamentation, and brutal efficiency. These weren't designed to inspire awe, they were designed to house as many families as possible as quickly as possible. The system was replicated across the Eastern Bloc with local variations: the Plattenbau in East Germany, the Panelak in Czechoslovakia, the Velika Pljetya, again, I'm sorry if I'm butchering these. In Belgrade, Serbia, these concrete titans formed distinctive neighborhoods like New Belgrade or Novi Beograd, where massive blokovi, or blocks, house thousands of residents in geometric formations. I live in Serbia. I've always been enamored by these imposing structures. Their raw concrete facades and systemic arrangement created a unique urban landscape that's both intimidating and strangely beautiful. The repetition of these structures created entire micro-districts, neighborhoods built from identical buildings arranged in geometric patterns, often resembling nothing so much as storage units for humans. But to reduce this architectural movement to mere utility would be a mistake. Brutalist design embodied the socialist ideals at the time: equality through standardization, the celebration of raw materials, and the rejection of bourgeoisie ornamentation. Consider the Palace of Parliament in Bucharest, the world's heaviest building and second largest administrative building after the Pentagon. It's massive. Its massive, unapologetically boxy form wasn't just an architectural choice, it was a political statement about power, permanence, and the socialist state. Similar thinking emerged in Western brutalism. Boston's City Hall and London's Barbican Centre weren't built to house the masses, but they share that same honest expression of materials and unapologetic geometry. There's something paradoxically democratic about these structures. They don't hide their function or construction behind decorative facades. The concrete panel construction method itself dictated the boxy aesthetic. Concrete was poured into standardized rectangular forms, creating panels that could be hoisted into place and connected to create walls and floors. Any deviation from straight lines or right angles would have added tremendous complexity to this industrial process. What's remarkable is how these buildings, once derided as soulless concrete monstrosities, have gained a new appreciation among architectural photographers, historians, and enthusiasts. The very qualities that made them seem inhuman, their massive scale, their repetitive patterns, their uncompromising angularity, now appear boldly honest in an age of architectural pretense. In these structures, we see perhaps the purest expression of the box, as both a practical solution and an ideological statement. They remind us that sometimes the most honest design is the one that doesn't try to be anything other than what it is, a container for human activity, constructed as efficiently as the technology of the time would allow. If brutalist architecture represents boxiness on a monumental scale, firearms showcase the same ethos in handheld form. The evolution of firearms design in the latter half of the 20th century mirrors many of the same industrial and practical consideration we've seen elsewhere. The evolution of firearms design in the latter half of the 20th century mirrors many of the same industrial and practical considerations we've seen elsewhere. Perhaps no firearm better exemplifies the triumph of boxy design than the Glock. When Austrian engineer Gaston Glock introduced his G17 pistol in 1982, it represented a radical departure from traditional handgun aesthetics. Gone were the graceful curves and contours of classic pistols, replaced by a simple polymer frame with flat surfaces and minimal machining. The Glock wasn't designed to be beautiful, it was designed to be functional, reliable, and mass-producible. The polymer frame, now ubiquitous but revolutionary at the time, allowed for molding rather than machining, making straight lines and flat surfaces not just a stylistic choice, but a manufacturing necessity. The Glock's distinctive square-off slide and frame created a silhouette so instantly recognizable that even non-enthusiasts can identify it at a glance. This wasn't form following function, this was form and function becoming one and the same. Similar industrial logic drove the design of other iconic boxy firearms. The MAC-10 and Tech-9, with their brutally simplistic sheet metal construction, represented firearms stripped to their absolute essentials. These weren't the product of traditional gunsmithing, they were industrial products designed for economical mass production. Their boxy profiles weren't aesthetic choices so much as they were the inevitable result of simplified manufacturing techniques. The bullpup rifle designs like the Steyr AUG took boxiness in a different direction. By placing the action behind the trigger group, these rifles achieved a compact overall length while maintaining barrel length. The result was often a distinctively geometric profile, particularly in the AUG's case, with its futuristic rectangular carrying handle integrated with the optic. Here again, the boxy design wasn't merely stylistic, it was a logical housing for the internal components arranged in the most space-efficient configuration. What's fascinating is how these utilitarian designs became style icons in their own right. The Glock's aesthetic has become so influential that virtually every modern polymer-framed handgun adopts aspects of its boxy profile. The angular silhouettes of tactical firearms have come to represent modernity, efficiency, and no-nonsense functionality. Films and video games further cemented these designs in popular culture, with the distinctive profiles of these firearms instantly communicating their purpose. In firearms design, we see perhaps the clearest demonstration of how industrial considerations drive aesthetic outcomes. The clean lines, flat surfaces, and right angles weren't stylistic indulgences. They were requirements for efficient manufacturing. Each flat surface represented a simpler machining operation. Each right angle meant a more straightforward manufacturing process. The box, once again, proved to be the most efficient container for functionality. Yet there's something almost philosophical about these designs. Unlike traditional firearms that often disguise their mechanical nature with flowing lines and decorative touches, these boxy firearms express an almost aggressive honesty about their purpose and construction. Like brutalist architecture and utilitarian vehicles, they communicate directly and without pretense exactly what they are and how they're made. This transparent relationship between form and function creates objects that, despite or perhaps because of their utilitarian origins, exert a powerful aesthetic appeal. They represent design stripped to its essential elements, no more and no less than what is required to fill their purpose. When it comes to automotive design, boxiness represents an approach that prioritizes function over form, creating vehicles that have become iconic precisely because of their uncompromising utility. The Volvo 240 stands as perhaps the quintessential boxy car. Introduced in 1974 and produced with minimal styling changes until 1993, this Swedish brick on wheels embodied safety, practicality, and durability. Its nearly vertical vertical windshield, flat sides, and perpendicular rear end weren't stylistic choices, they were engineering solutions that maximized interior space, simplified manufacturing, and improved structural integrity. The 240's body panels could be stamped from flat sheets with minimal waste, assembled with straightforward welding processes, and repaired with relative ease. This wasn't a car designed to turn heads, it was designed to transport families safely for decades. Similar industrial logic drove the development of other iconic Boxy vehicles. The original Mercedes-Benz G-Class, or G-Wagon, developed as a military vehicle in the late 1970s, featured a body that was essentially a series of flat panels joined at right angles. This wasn't an aesthetic decision, but a practical one. Those flat surfaces could be easily armored, replaced when damaged, and manufactured with primitive tooling if necessary. That this utilitarian box would eventually become a luxury status symbol represents one of the great ironies of automotive culture. The Land Rover Defender follows similar principles. Its aluminum body panels were so flat they could practically be cut with scissors and mounted to a ladder frame with minimal specialized tooling. This wasn't just manufacturing expedience, it was a design that allowed for field repairs in remote locations with basic equipment. The Defender's boxy silhouette was the visual expression of absolute practicality, a vehicle reduced to its most essential elements. Eastern Bloc vehicles took boxiness to another level entirely. The Russian Lada Niva and later Vaz models represented automotive design stripped of all pretense. Their sharp-edged rectilinear bodies weren't just easy to manufacture, they were necessary conditions to the limitations of Soviet industrial capacity. When your manufacturing technology can't easily produce compound curves, you design vehicles without them. The resulting aesthetic wasn't just a bug, it was a feature. Honest vehicles for a society that ostensibly valued function over form. Even in the East, in Japan, where manufacturing precision allowed for more complex shapes, boxy designs flourished for practical reasons. The Toyota FJ40 Land Cruiser, Mitsubishi Pajero, and Nissan Patrol all featured squared-off profiles that maximized interior volume while providing superior visibility and predictable dimensions for off-road navigation. The iconic Kai cars and vans of Japan pushed boxiness to its logical extreme, creating vehicles that resembled moving cubes to extract every possible cubic inch of usable space from their strictly limited dimensions. What's fascinating is how these utilitarian shapes acquired cultural significance beyond their practical origins. The Volvo 240 became the unofficial vehicle of intellectual and academics. The G-Wagon transformed from a military workhorse to a celebrity status symbol. The Land Rover Defender developed a cult following that has only been intensified since its original production ended. These vehicles weren't designed to be cool, they were designed to work, yet their uncompromising functionality created a different kind of appeal altogether. The boxy vehicle represents a particular philosophy of design, the notion that the most honest expression of an object is one that makes no attempt to disguise its function or construction. These aren't vehicles pretending to be something they're not. There's no styling flourish suggesting speed when none exists, no decorative element that serves no purpose. They are quite literally boxes on wheels with engines, and they're all the more compelling for that honesty. Beyond their practical origins, boxy designs have embedded themselves deeply into our cultural consciousness, often representing values and ideas that transcend their physical forms. This aesthetic language crosses boundaries between architecture, vehicles, and firearms, creating a unified visual vocabulary that speaks to certain philosophical and cultural ideals. The cultural impact of boxy designs can be observed most clearly in how they've been represented in media and popular culture. Brutalist architecture has emerged as a cinematic shorthand for dystopian futures. From A Clockwork Orange to Blade Runner 2049, these monolithic concrete structures communicate alienation, institutional power, and social dysfunction. Yet paradoxically, the same aesthetic has recently undergone a renaissance on social media, with dedicated Instagram accounts and coffee table books celebrating the raw beauty of these once derided structures. What was once seen as inhospitable is now celebrated as authentically uncompromising. Boxy vehicles enjoy similar cultural resonance. The Land Rover Defender and Mercedes G-Wagon have transcended their utilitarian origins to become symbols of adventure and authentic experience in an increasingly digital world. Films and advertisements deploy these vehicles when they want to communicate rugged individualism and escape from modern comfort. Their very impracticality in urban environments has made them powerful status symbols, a box-shaped rejection of streamlined conformity. Firearms with angular industrial designs have similarly penetrated popular culture, appearing in countless films, video games, and television series. The distinctive primitive silhouette of a Glock pistol or an H&K MP5 has become visual shorthand for tactical capability and modern efficiency. Their angular forms communicate precision and purpose in a way that more cultural designs with wood and blued steel cannot. These aren't just tools, they're cultural signifiers loaded with association and power, competence and technological advancement. What unites these diverse applications of Boxy aesthetic is a shared philosophical foundation. At its core, the box represents honesty, the rejection of unnecessary ornamentation in favor of transparent functionality. This honesty connects to several philosophical traditions: the Bauhaus principle that form follows function, the modernist rejection of decorative excess, and even Diogenes' ancient pursuit of living without pretense. The box, in all of its possible manifestations, says, "This is what I am. Nothing more, nothing less." There's something almost moral about this design approach, a suggestion that good design should reveal rather than conceal its purpose in construction. This ethos stands in stark contrast to contemporary design trends that often disguise functionality behind seamless surfaces and hidden mechanisms. The iPhone, with its glossy monolithic form, revealing nothing of its internal components, represents the antithesis of the Boxy design's transparent honesty. Yet paradoxically, the very utilitarian origins of these designs have made them powerful symbols of authenticity in an age often criticized for its superficiality. In a world of Instagram filters and carefully curated digital personas, the uncompromising boxiness of a Volvo 240 or a brutalist apartment block offers something refreshingly real. Their very rejection of style has become, ironically, their style. This points to a deeper philosophical tension in how we relate to designed objects. The box represents a kind of material honesty, a direct expression of function without pretense. Yet, when we choose Boxy designs for their aesthetic appeal rather than their practical beliefs, we're engaging in a kind of second-order appreciation. We're not just valuing the object for what it does, but for what it represents: authenticity, honesty, functionality, and a certain rejection of frivolity. The Boxy aesthetic also relates to our relationship with time and permanence. Brutalist architecture was built to last, its massive concrete forms defying the temporary nature of human existence. Similar expectations exist for vehicles like the Land Rover Defender or Volvo 240, which were designed with longevity as a primary concern. Even firearms like the AK-47, with its famously reliable and simple Boxy receiver, are celebrated for their ability to function across decades with minimal maintenance. In an era of planned obsolescence and disposable consumer goods, these objects represent a different relationship with materiality, one that values permanence over novelty. The cross-cultural appeal of boxiness also merits examination. While Western consumer culture has generally favored curves and organic forms as signifiers of sophistication, the box maintains its appeal across vastly different societies. From Japanese Kai cars to Russian panel housing, from German military vehicles to American tactical equipment, the Boxy aesthetic transcends national boundaries. This suggests something fundamental about human appreciation for geometric clarity and honest construction that overrides cultural differences. Environmentally, the Boxy aesthetic represents interesting contradictions. On one hand, the simplified manufacturing processes and emphasis on longevity could be considered environmentally conscious design principles. A Volvo 240 still running after 4 decades represents a substantial saving of resources compared to a series of more stylish but shorter-lived vehicles. Brutalist buildings, despite their concrete-intensive construction, often prove remarkably adaptable to different uses over time. Yet, these same objects often represent an industrial age thinking about resource use, prioritizing durability through material mass rather than through clever design. The philosophy of the box ultimately speaks to the fundamental human tensions between beauty and utility, between expression and function, between individualism and standardization. The box doesn't try to resolve these tensions, it simply embodies them honestly. Perhaps this is why these designs maintain their appeal across generations and contexts. They represent not just a specific aesthetic choice, but a philosophical position on how humans should relate to the material world, directly, honestly, and without unnecessary complication. As we continue to navigate an increasingly digital world where physical objects become ever more disguised between seamless surfaces, the appeal of the box, in all its angular, uncompromising honesty, may only grow stronger. In a sea of products designed to hide their functionality and construction, the box stands out as refreshingly transparent about what it is and how it works. Perhaps that's the ultimate philosophical significance of the Boxy aesthetic. In a world of increasing abstraction, it offers something concretely, undeniably real. In examining the Boxy aesthetic across architecture, vehicles, and firearms, we've explored how these utility-driven designs can transcend its practical origins to become culturally significant. These angular, uncompromising forms speak to us because they embody honesty in a world often characterized by artifice and planned obsolescence. The box, whether in the form of a brutalist apartment block, a Land Rover Defender, or a Glock pistol, represents design reduced to its essential elements. There's a certain purity in this approach that resonates across cultures and contexts. It suggests that sometimes the most direct solution is also the most enduring. As design trends continue to evolve, the boxy aesthetic serves as a reminder that functionality need not to be disguised. As design trends continue to evolve, the boxy aesthetic serves as a reminder that functionality need not be disguised, that utility has its own inherent beauty, and that honesty in design can create objects that transcend their utilitarian origins to become cultural icons. In an increasingly digital world where physical reality becomes more abstract and distant, these tangible, unapologetically real objects offer something increasingly rare: authenticity. Perhaps that's why, despite their utilitarian origins, they continue to captivate our imagination and earn our appreciation. That's it. That's it for my video. If you enjoyed this exploration of boxy design, please hit that like button and subscribe. If you want to see more content like this, drop a comment. Also leave a comment below if I missed any cool boxy designs that you like, or your favorite boxy designs, whatever it is, a building, a vehicle, a gun, name it. I would love to know. Also, make sure to hit that notification bell. I'm planning on a lot more videos, mainly historical videos, so stick around, and thank you for watching.